Welcome back. We now have the table population populated with the 10 countries and their total population. This is great, but it's only useful if the consumers of the data can read this information and analyze the data as required. We can do this by using the select statement offered by SQL. If you have come from a traditional programming language background, you might refer to this as reading the data. But in SQL, executing a select statement is referred to as querying the data. So that's the term we will be using for the rest of the course. A simple select statement has a select and a from clause. In the from clause, you specify the name of the table, and in the select clause, you specify the name of the columns from which you want to select the data. When writing select statements, I prefer starting with the from clause and then progress to the select clause. As you can imagine, logically you would be finding the table from which you want to get the data first, and then you will identify the columns that you are interested in. I find writing SQL statements in the same way to be quite intuitive and easier when especially dealing with multiple tables. But please feel free to do whatever works for you. As we know, we want to select the data from the population table. So let's replace the table name with population. And we know this table has two columns, country and total population. Let's assume that we just want to get the list of countries. In this case, we just need to replace the column name as country in the select clause, as you can see here. Executing this query would result with list of country names as shown here. If we also want to get the total population, we just have to add total population to the column list. But please remember to separate the column names with comma. The result of this query would look like this. But sometimes when you're doing quick analysis of the data in a wide table with multiple columns, listing all the column names might become a bit tedious. In those circumstances, you can use the wildcard character star instead of listing individual column names. Star is equivalent to all, and it brings back all the columns from the database table. We have already seen this in the previous lesson, but executing this SQL statement will give you both columns from the table. Feel free to use star when doing quick analysis of the data, but using star is not recommended for production projects due to two reasons. Firstly, it's not obvious for someone looking at the SQL to know which columns are being selected. They'll have to describe the table to see the list of columns in the table to know that information. Secondly, if a database administrator adds an additional column to the table on a later date, that could break an application that's trying to select the data using select star unless the application code has been changed to expect the new column. For example, a web application might not be expecting the new column being added, and if you use a star instead of column names, the database will return all the columns including the new one. This could break the front-end application. But specifying the column names in the select statement avoids this issue. So please don't use star for production applications, but feel free to use it for ad hoc analysis. Now that we have an initial understanding about select statements, let's see them in action. Here we are in the SQL Studio. Let me demonstrate select statements. We've already seen how to use select star on a table, so we won't repeat that, but let's look at the other variations. Let's say we want to select the countries from the population table. For that, you would write the select statement as select, country as the column name, and then you would go from the table which is population. You also need a semicolon at the end because that's the terminator for any SQL statements. And let's execute this one. And as you can see, it's listed all the 10 country names here. But if you wanted to also have the total population, you simply have to add a comma at the first end of the first column, and then you would have to add the other column name. In our case, it is total population. And when you execute this statement, you're going to get the result with the country and the total population, as you can see here. Instead of this, if you wanted to see the total population first and then the country next, you can do that as well. You simply have to swap the column names around in the select statement. So let me do that. So I'm going to bring the total population as the first column, and then I'm going to have a comma at the end of it, and the second column is country. So let me paste that as well. And if I execute this, I'm going to see total population first and then country next. You can do many more things with select statements, but I hope this has given you an initial understanding about select statement. Select is one of the widely used statements in SQL. And as I said, it has many more features than this. So we have a separate section just to focus on select statement. I'll take you through more details in there, but that's the end of this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.